Hi guys, so today I'm going to be bringing you guys my N.E.W.Ts Readathon TBR. What the N.E.W.Ts Readathon is it's a Harry Potter themed readathon created by G over at Book Roast, so go check out her channel and go check out the announcement video that she's got posted. I believe she posted it back at the end of June because I've had my TBR kind of set up and I've been playing with it for the last about a month or so, and I think I've got it pretty much set in stone at this point. So again, what the N.E.W.Ts, go check out G's channel, Book Roast, and check out her announcement video if you want to participate. She's got all of the subjects listed and all the prompts listed in her video. But just to give you a quick idea, the N.E.W.Ts is going to be like the Owls, which she hosted back in April, just more difficult. Instead of, like with the Owls, having to read one book to pass the subject, to finish a book, one book for the subject and get an outstanding. To get an outstanding in a subject for the N.E.W.Ts, you'd have to finish 3 books. There's going to be a prompt for acceptable grade, a prompt for exceeds expectations grade, and a prompt for outstanding. So if you want to do all 12 subjects, that's 36 books in a month. If you want to do that, that's completely up to you guys. I'm not going to push it because I'm not going to be able to do it. I already know I'm not going to be able to read all 36 of these books in a month, even though some of them are really short. Like, I purposely picked as many short books in my library as I possibly could to make this readathon not only accomplishing in my mind, give me something that feels accomplishing in my mind, but also to make it fun and make it doable and give me a variety of things to read throughout this whole month. So without further ado, the subjects for the N.E.W.Ts and their prompts, starting with Ancient Runes. Ancient Runes, to get an acceptable, you have to read a book set in the past, and I'm going to sit this right here because it's got the pictures of all of the covers on it. I know the angle's really bad. For acceptable, I picked City of Brass because it is set in 17th century Cairo. I need to go this way. Okay, for exceeds expectations, you have to pick one of the most ancient books on your TBR. So a book that's been sitting on your TBR for a while. Your definition of a while is going to be your definition of a while. For me, I picked one of the very first Kindle books I actually got and haven't read yet, which is, and I can already feel the hate comments coming, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I'm already working on the Throne of Glass series, but those aren't as ancient on my TBR as this because I got these way before I even showed any interest in Throne of Glass. So I picked this one for exceeds expectations in Ancient Runes. All I really know about this is that there is a huge hype train for it and that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling with Fae. Other than that, I'm going into it blind. And that's about it for this one. For outstanding, you have to read a book translated from another language. For that, and I actually saw this on a list that I googled, I picked Six Heirs, which is the first book in the Secret of G trilogy. For arithmancy, to get an acceptable, you have to read a book that's at least 300 pages long. For that, I picked Gods and Proxies, and it is exactly 300 pages long. To get an exceeds expectations in arithmancy, you have to read a book that ends on an even page number. For that, I picked Elves of the Blood Moon Part 1. This is where I'm going to get more hate comments. It's only 16 pages long. There are 5 parts to the series, and the rest of the parts are going to come in here in just a minute. Where was I at? For an outstanding, you can read a book that is not the first in the series. So for that, I'm going to read Elves of the Blood Moon parts 2, 3, and 4 so that I can read part 5 for another prompt. But we'll get to that here in just a minute. For I'm skipping astronomy. For astronomy, to get an acceptable in astronomy, you have to pick a book with stars on the cover. So for that, I chose Zenith, which is by another booktuber named Sasha Alsberg. Go check out her channel, check out her book. If you would like, support a fellow booktuber. This is not a paid promotion for this book at all. I just figured I'd throw that in there. If anybody else is interested in the book and is looking for something There we go. Looking for something new to read. It's kind of a sci-fi vibe. For Exceeds Expectations in Astronomy, you have to read a book with the word sky in the title. For that, I picked The Boy Who Lit Up the Sky, which is the first book in the Two Moons of Renor series. I know the lighting on this is absolutely horrible and the iPad's going to make me look really dark, but this is the best way for me to do it because pretty much all of the books that I picked for this TBR are on my Kindle, and this is the best way to show the covers when I don't know how to edit. I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I don't know how to edit. I never learned how to edit, so this is the best way for me to do this. And then to get an outstanding in astronomy, you have to read a book that's set on a different world or a different planet. So for that, I'm going to re-listen to the audiobook for Halo: The Fall of Reach. For Care of Magical Creatures, to get an A, an acceptable, you have to pick a book with an animal on the cover. For that, I picked the 2016 edition of the Celtic Mythology Collection because it's got swans on the cover, pretty swans. For an Exceeds Expectations, because Haggard teaches this and he's not really a big reader, you had to pick a book that is under 160 pages. For that, I picked, you zoom in, Dark Grasp. It is 42 pages long. And then to get an outstanding in Care of Magical Creatures, you had to pick a book that includes dragons. So this next one is going to be another re-listen for me. I'm going to re-listen to the audiobook for Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King, which is probably, to date, my favorite audiobook ever. Go find it, go listen to it. The guy that reads this book is phenomenal when it comes to voicing, because there's a part at the end of the book. I'm not going to spoil anything by giving context or anything, but the main antagonist is yelling and chasing the main protagonist, and he just sounds like he is going completely insane. This guy that narrates this does a phenomenal job, so definitely go check that one out. For charms, to get an acceptable, you have to read a book with magic in it. For that one, I picked The Magical Secret of the Crystal Kingdom, because if it's got magic in the title, it's probably got magic in the book. Plus, that cover is really pretty. It looks like it's really pretty. For Exceeds Expectations, you have to pick a book that has a cover that charmed you, which is a book that was a cover buy. For that, most of my Kindle books are cover buys, so I had a lot to choose from. But I picked probably one of the prettiest books in my Kindle library, which is Pandora Park by Piers Anthony. And then for outstanding, you'd read a book that you think will leave a mark. For this one, I don't necessarily think that the events in the book will leave a mark on me personally, but I feel like they'll have a really heavy impact on characters other than just the main character, which I know that's with every book, but I feel like this one's going to be a lot heavier as far as the impact, because of what I've heard about it on BookTube, and that is A Madness So Discreet. Okay, for Defense Against the Dark Arts, to get an acceptable, you have to read a book that is the last in the series. Now, going back to, where'd it go? My outstanding in arithmancy, I said I was going to read parts 2, 3, and 4 of Elves of the Blood Moon. So that way I could read part 5 for Defense Against the Dark Arts acceptable prompt. Then to get an Exceeds Expectations, my brain is not working today for some reason, guys. To get an Exceeds Expectations in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you have to read a book that has like deflectable parts on the cover, or that the parts of the cover are shiny or foiled. For that, I've actually seen the physical copy of these books, and the gold portions are shiny and foiled. I picked The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. And then to get an outstanding, you had to pick a book with dark in the title. For that, I'm going to have to go to Goodreads, because I skipped a bunch of books in taking screenshots. And I'm going to read a Kindle in Motion book. If I can find it on Goodreads. I cannot find it on Goodreads. It's a Kindle in Motion book called Darkness There, and it's like a small collection. It's like a short collection of Edgar Allan Poe poems and stories. And then for divination, to get an acceptable in divination, you have to read a book that is set in the future. For that one, I picked another Halo series book. For that one, I picked Halo New Blood. Or if I'm not feeling that right now, or when I get to it, if I get to it, if I'm not feeling that one, I have this other one that I had picked up from the library, and it is called Darkover Landfall. And this was written and published in the 70s, and it is set in the 21st century. So for when it was written, it is set in the future, and it's also set on another planet. So I could use that for astronomy also. But I don't know if I'm going to use that or not. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it was kind of mismarketed because it was branded as a fantasy, and from what little tiny bit I've read of it, it reads more like a sci-fi because it's about a ship leaving an overcrowded Earth and crash landing on another planet that they know nothing about and trying to figure out what to do now that they're crashed on this planet until they can get their ship fixed and get to the planet that they're supposed to be on. So I don't know if I'm going to use that one or not, but the one that I had officially picked for it was Halo New Blood. For an exceeds expectation, you had to pick a book that was under 200 pages. So for that one, I picked this one. Sorry guys, I skipped doing a lot of screenshots. Here we go. Okay. I picked the prequel novella to the Book of Never series. And then for an outstanding, you had to pick a book with mythology. So either the subject matter could be mythology, or it's like a mythology retelling. So for that one, I picked Monsters of Celtic Mythology by Bernard Evslin. I can't read today either. My brain is just not functionable today. I don't know why. Okay. For herbology, to get an acceptable, you have to read a book with a green cover. For that, I picked another Kindle in Motion book. This is not the cover of the Kindle in Motion book, but this is the closest that I could find, is the Grimm's Fairy Tales, or the Brothers Grimm Kindle in Motion book. Okay. And then for acceptable, you had to read a book with illustrations in it. And I picked this one because there are like little pictures at the beginnings of the chapter sections, so I might be cheating a little bit, but I'm counting it. And it is short stories from Hogwarts of heroism, hardship, and dangerous hobbies. I think how this comes together is it's a Pottermore Presents, so I think people from Pottermore write these and then they get compiled into a book format. I'm not sure. I found it on Kindle for really cheap. That's why I bought it. And it was Harry Potter. Couldn't resist a Harry Potter book. And then for outstanding, you have to read a book with air, light, water, or sun in the title. For that one, I have two options. I'm either going to be reading Gate of Air by Risa Nelson, or if I don't feel that one, then I have a backup option, and you can call this cheating too, but it still count. River of Spears by Cade Derricks. a river is a body of water, so I mean, I'm stretching it, but I'm counting it. Okay. For History of Magic, you need a book that would fit in at the Hogwarts library. Not necessarily in content, but how it looks. Like, it looks old, it looks vintagey, it looks, you know, like it would fit in at Hogwarts. For that one, I picked Steel Magic by Andre Norton. For Exceeds Expectations, you needed to pick a book that was published at least 5 years ago. For that prompt, I picked Anne Marie's Asylum. I believe this was published back in 2013, so it just barely hits that cusp of 5 years, but it still counts. And then for Outstanding, you needed to pick a book that was at least 400 pages. For that one, I picked Kings of Ruin, which is the first book in the Kingdom of Sand book series, and it is exactly 400 pages. For Muggle Studies, which is the subject that is on the very bottom of my totem pole priority list right now, I have, for Acceptable, which is read a book by a favorite author, I have Different Seasons by Stephen King. For Exceeds Expectations, you need to read a biography, so I picked Hell's Princess, The Mystery of Belle Guinness, Butcher of Men. I didn't even know this was a biography when I got it from Kindle until I had found it in a Goodreads deals email, and it was labeled as a biography. So I was like, sweet, I have one to fill that prompt. And then for Outstanding, you have to read a retelling. So for that one, I picked Wolves and Daggers, which is a steampunk Red Riding Hood retelling. For Potions, to get an Acceptable, you had to read a book with a color in the title. For that one, I picked Blades of Blood. Blood is red, so, I mean, it counts, kind of. In my mind, it counts. And then for Exceeds Expectations, you needed to read a book with a male lead character. For that one, I picked All Things to Everyone, which is the first book in the Sinister Sydney series. And then for Outstanding, you needed to read a book that was over 350 pages. For that one, I picked Return, which is the first book in the Sun God's Heir series, and it is 360 pages. Last but not least, Transfiguration. Thankfully, we're almost done. We have 3 prompts left to go over. For Acceptable, you had to read a book with a gray cover. The first choice that I have for this one, I'm kind of stretching it a little bit because there's gray on the cover, but the cover is not all gray. So my first choice for this one is Beren and Luthien by J.R.R. Tolkien. And then if I'm not feeling that one, my second choice is going to be the first part of the Ballad of Bayan Stormhammer by Timothy Morris. I think this is divided up into, I think 5 parts. I'm not sure. But I have the first part. So if I'm not feeling the J.R.R. Tolkien, then I'll switch to this. To get an Exceeds Expectations, you need to read a book by a new-to-you author. So it can either be an author that you've not read any of their books before, or it can be a debut author, whichever you're feeling more. For that one, I have 2 choices also. I am going to probably be reading Magic, which is the first book in the Septimus Heap series by Angie Sage, because I just got this on Overdrive as an audiobook, or I'm going to read Queen's Poisoner by Jeff Wheeler, which is the first book in the King Fountain series. Last but not last, very finally at the end of the list, for Outstanding and Transfiguration, you have to read a book that is set either in a kingdom or has to do with royals. And for that, I am picking A Throne for Sisters by Anne Rice, which is the first book in the Throne for Sisters series. Okay, so now that I can catch a breath, that is it for my N.E.W.Ts TBR. Again, go check out Book Roast and go check out G and her channel called Book Roast. Find the Twitter page if you want to participate. You don't have to fill any of the prompts in. This is just a fun thing for you to do. If you want the prompts to help you pick out books to read, then that's fine. If you don't, you don't have to follow the prompts. Keep an eye out for vlogs and Twitter sprints. If you're going to participate, keep an eye out for those Twitter sprints and vlogs from not only me but other participants, including G, and I will see you soon in my next video.